Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. So happy to be here to talk about Nashville Soccer Club. As always, well, not as always, well, at least this week, I'm here with Clay Trainum, Valer Shabilla. I love the fact that we will record on a Tuesday when Valer can't be here, but if Steven cannot be here specifically on a Monday, we can just do this show without him.
Some people are irreplaceable, but also some people are getting ready for the school year, Stephen, and it is August.
That's perfectly fair. I completely get that. Valer?
I said I'm not going to be available Monday and didn't say anything else. And you guys decided to wait. I don't know if this is on me. I have no idea. But I will say that people want to hear me generally. So I appreciate it.
Generally, the people. I mean, that's. I mean,
By
I
the
would
way,
say.
did you either of you guys see? Because I got tagged in it. Someone had seen a car driving around Nashville or driving around that had a Chattanooga FC sticker and a Chelsea sticker on it, and it did make me wonder if Steven was actually in town and we just didn't know about it.
Nope, wasn't me. Already got tagged with the person that it actually was. Nope, don't even like the joke, honestly.
Yeah,
don't
I think
even
it
like
was
the joke.
Steven.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Cool. Steven came to Nashville and didn't tell us.
His background is different right now, so he could well be in Nashville. Who knows?
It is true.
If you're a Kappa member, you get to see all of our backgrounds, by the way. Sign up to 615soccer.com to become a Kappa member and get a video version of this podcast if you would like.
Stephen, you weren't yet on the call, but I suggested that we do a charades game. And that way the people who are listening who aren't Kappa members just get like, okay, he says it's 3 words. Just 10 minutes of charades on an audio medium. How do we lose
the rest of our listeners by Clay Trainum? Clay, how was your weekend, by the way? Do you have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty low key. Like I said, we're just getting ready for the school year to get started and watching a little bit of college sports because that part of my job will start fairly soon here. So the local soccer teams are all up and going on the college level. Volleyball teams are getting started. And so watched a couple games. Also watched the Nashville game with Taylor Washington's family, actually. So the Washingtons were in town, and so they had a watch party shindig up in Hendersonville. And so we went and watched the game there, at least until the rain delay. The rain delay kind of took a lot of the wind out of people's sails, as did the goal right before the rain delay.
I would assume so. No, that's cool. Valer, what about you?
Really funny of you guys to talk about the rain delay when you weren't there in person. Some of us were. And first of all, shout out to all the Nashville SC fans who made it to New York. Wasn't a large group by any means. Actually, the group that I knew was going, half of them already lived in New York, so I was a little. It was kind of funny, but there were some people who traveled from Nashville. Multiple people from our Discord, and I got to meet some of them and talk to them a little bit. So that was really cool to see. So yeah, shout out to everybody who made the trip. I thought it was a good showing from the fans. I know going to watch soccer at a baseball stadium is not an ideal situation. And the rain
unless
delay,
it's First Tennessee Park or First Horizon.
Still not an ideal situation, but it was a good situation. I'll give it that. But yeah, no, I think the rain delay was a little unfortunate because I thought the game, whether on the pitch or outside the pitch, was just kind of like getting to a really good point. And unfortunately, the rain delay kind of killed a lot of things going for both teams, really. And then for my weekend, I've been in New York. It's been great. We checked out some New York things to do. Got on a ferry, got on the water. The weather was kind of hot actually on Saturday and Sunday, but Monday was pretty nice, and we got to do some more New York stuff, and it was really cool. And I like New York, a really good place to go and visit. I highly encourage folks who want an excuse to go to New York to go to a Nashville SC game. But I don't know if I can ever live in that chaos. But it was a great time to visit.
It's the second best pizza city you've been to. It goes Evansville,
okay,
then New York.
That is funny because I was also in Chicago last week, and I didn't have any pizza in Chicago. I did end up having some pizza in New York. I don't eat pizza often, so it is what it is. But yeah, no, that's That was my weekend. It was very, I've been out of town since Wednesday, both Chicago and New York, and some of that is by choice, some of it wasn't, but here we are. And Nashville SC just not having the best weekend themselves either. Steven, was your weekend better than Nashville SC?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that comprehensive detail on how good of a city New York actually is. I really needed that review from your end just to know.
Hey, I think
So,
it's
really,
so
really
big
appreciate
that a
it.
lot of people actually don't think about it as an away destination. I really think so. Like I think a lot of people look at like maybe a Montreal or a Cincinnati or something like that. That's like it's kind of like the soccer or like the intrigue of it. But New York is like such a big thing that you don't think about it as a soccer thing. And that
It could be true. I think with the point, like we've gotten to the point with away matches, and we've been around and we've been in this league long enough now where people are like, "Oh, I've been to this city before now. I don't need to go again."
that's fair.
Which I feel like is now what is I mean, St. Louis, that's why we had the biggest showing that we've had all year from away fans in St. Louis, is because of the fact it's a city that we've never been to. It's close. Everybody was anticipating that match. I guarantee you, if we play St. Louis again, it'll be half, if not more.
Yeah.
I will say, I wasn't here for the because I was gone last week, so I apologize. St. Louis has one of the best tailgating setups for supporters I've ever seen in my entire existence. It is so cool. Like 10 out of 10, need it most places. It's really cool.
I loved Nashville's first tailgating setup.
Absolutely.
But it was
Oh my,
unbelievable, the
can you
tailgating setup
imagine
they
how
had
many
in
more
Geodis when they
people would
first moved
tailgate?
there. If they could have kept that, that would have been wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. But I had a good weekend. I've been moving and pretty busy. I was in Utah, then St. Louis, then Baltimore. It's been kind of a crazy travel experience for me. So I'm finally starting to get stuff settled back in. So kind of had a lazy weekend. Beat Untitled Goose Game again, which if you've never played Untitled Goose Game, it is a phenomenal game. Please do that. And yeah, just kind of watched the match on Sunday, which was fun. Not really. But anyways, um we got to talk about it, unfortunately. As much as I would love to continue talking to you two about BS, like because I could do that literally for hours. We've done that for hours multiple times before. Unfortunately, we have to talk about soccer. And we have to talk about Nashville soccer. Three three matches in a row, losses. Kind of getting out, still in the race for Supporter Shield, but not. It's not looking as such possible nowadays. Um, this obviously this is not the lowest that we've had in morale all season. We've earlier in the season we had multiple opportunities where our morale was a little bit lower, didn't know what our expectations would be. But as we've seen this team be extremely successful in adversity, it hurts even more when we can't come off from adversity now. So, when it comes to your morale on the team right now from the both of you, how are you feeling?
It's I mean, it's a little lower, obviously, just because three losses in a row. But I do think having those three games away actually helps Nashville's case in terms of how much does this affect the fan base. I think at home, Nashville is still a very good team, and they've shown that over and over again. And I'm not saying fans will forget about the away losses, but it's much easier to not count that against the team when you're not there in person seeing it. And then there is a large portion of the fan base that are a little more casual than probably anybody who's listening to this podcast, who, just go to the home games and maybe they'll check the score on their phone for the away games. Maybe they won't. So I do think all three losses coming away from home, especially that San Diego game being like really late, I think that kind of helps Nashville's case a little bit because it just has seemed like the team is in hiatus more so than they've been losing. Now, based on their showings on the pitch, at times it seemed like the team was was gone. But yeah, I think morale overall will probably is definitely a little bit lower, and I do think that might affect Geodis Park on Saturday. I just don't think. I think once that whistle kicks off, when the kickoff happens, I think the fans will be right behind the team again, and I don't think we'll see a huge drop between the last home game and the Orlando home game coming up.
I I think this is the interesting part to me. It was a rematch that Nashville didn't win.
Mhm.
Nashville had been lights out in rematches this season, and that's really stuck out to me. I do think that you look at these three games and you find it's easy to find why things didn't go quite the way Nashville fans would have liked, which makes you feel a little bit like if you're a diehard, it kind of makes you feel like, okay, like this makes sense. I understand why this happens. Whereas like last year, when they're losing a bunch of games, it's just like, oh, they're just bad. like, uh, so there is a real difference there. As far as um, I think that the way that the other teams at the top of the East have been playing the last month kind of still leaves you with a bit of hope for maybe if you don't win Supporter Shield, you're still very much in the mix as a contender. And I think everyone realizes, and I think a lot of Nashville fans are starting to realize like the league's pretty tough. Like it's a tough league to be super competitive and win every weekend. And Nashville was probably overperforming for huge chunks of the season, so there naturally was going to be some sort of leveling off at some point. And I think we're looking at that, and I think looking at that and understanding why it's happening makes you feel maybe a little bit more at ease going into the rest of the season. Uh, we're going to talk about the Shield race a little bit later, but like Nashville's still going to have a lot to say about the Shield race. They're playing a good chunk of these teams still this season, beginning this weekend with Orlando. And Orlando was very much not in the Shield race a month ago. So these things can change quite quickly. And so there's still reasons to be optimistic. But I think Nashville's kind of regressing back to maybe still better than anyone thought. But they're a playoff team. They're going to be in the hunt for the top four of the playoffs, which I think is where we all kind of said would be a really good season. And so they're still very on track for a very good season.
Yeah, I think this is the first time this year, especially with having 3 losses in a row, where there's not necessarily one specific anomaly that steps out. I think there's multiple things that are now coming to fruition. Specifically, when we first lost to San Diego, that was a short rest away trip, like not that big of a deal. You go to St. Louis, they were better in transition than us, a place that we've never played. Apparently, we're just allergic to teams in the Western Conference. Now we play New York, a team that we have beaten before. This, specifically, a team that we know, even on a field that looked like a Lego miniature field, where Nashville is supposed to be expert in, and which is why they made the field thinner at even Geodis Park, is because they can play in that. They just looked gassed. They looked specifically like they just couldn't compete in a lot of ways. And you guys can let me know what you think. So Matthew Doyle came out with his power rankings for MLS. I'll read verbatim what he says. Dropped us to 11th place, by the way. They look almost completely out of gas. Hani Mukhtar's turnover and lack of repress on New York's game winner was brutal. Have an enormous 6-pointer at home this coming weekend against Orlando's side that will be on short rest. Like, do you think 11th is fair for this team? And do you think specifically where the expectations are of this team, kind of fit into that? We actually had Wesley reach out to us on Instagram asking what the expectations are for the end of the season based on these results. What are you guys thinking with that?
So I think it's important to remember he's not saying that Nashville is the 11th best team in the league. He's saying that their power rankings, which takes into current form.
Yeah.
Nashville form is not very good right now. If Nashville beats Orlando, they'll be like probably sixth in his power ranking next week. It's designed to be a week to week thing.
Yep.
I think that um, it makes sense. I still think it's kind of wild to drop a team that you had at number one down to 11th in the span of what, like 4 weeks. So that sounds very Matt Doyle. But other than that, it's not an unfair read on the way things are going. I do think we're going to talk about the game specifically in the next segment. I do think that in New York City, on that field, in that weather, there are some things that you just toss out and just say it's anomalous. Like it just it's hard. it's really hard to judge some things in those sorts of situations.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that if you take those 3 losses and spread them around that 17 or 16 game unbeaten streak, people will be probably viewing Nashville a little differently right now. I do think having them back to back to back is not ideal in terms of how Nashville is viewed. My expectations are still the same. I think Nashville, based on what they showed us, based on what we have seen this season, Nashville is a top 4 team in the East from everything I've seen this season. And no, that wasn't my expectation coming into the season. Coming into the season, I thought 8-9 was more accurate for Nashville, but we're not in the beginning of the season. We are at the tail end of, we're at the business end of the season, and the business end of the season, I see Nashville as a top 4 team because I saw them perform at that level earlier. Now there are 10 teams effectively going for the Supporters Shield, including Nashville, and that's probably where this 11th in the power ranking comes from in terms of Matt Doyle. So I can't really be mad at him because this is a team that has lost 3 games in a row. That said, those 10 teams are this is probably like the most heat we've seen from a Supporters Shield race. And those 10 teams will play against each other at various points in the next few weeks, and there'll be a lot of movement. And Nashville might end up first all the way down to 10th on the Supporters Shield race. And it's a huge drop because most of those teams are in the East as well. So it's a lot of points coming off of each other. But Nashville can also get a couple wins here and there, and then all of a sudden they're shooting up the rankings. So it's really not a sort of like it's too late to react to this. Even if the Supporter Shield is kind of out of reach, I would say. Even if the Supporter Shield is a little out of reach, I would say still finishing up top 4 is still an available thing. It's not going to be easy by any means, but I think it's still something they can get out.
I mean, you think it? Yes or no? Does not after these 3 losses, does Nashville still finish top 4? Yes or no?
Yes.
No.
I just would like to say here that, like, you want to get your worst patch out now because really what it's all about is playing your best at the right time of season when it gets to MLS Cup. I mean, we've seen that when New York City FC won MLS Cup, they weren't anywhere close to the best team in MLS. They got on a heater. They got lucky that they didn't have to play Nashville again because Nashville was eliminated on penalties in Philly. Like, I think Nashville's best soccer is still very much ahead of them. And if they get out of this patch, if it's this week, next week, whenever, I think that we're gonna see more of the team that we've seen for most of this season, not more of what we've seen in the last month of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk about it in the third segment. These next 2 games absolutely are going to be huge. But first, we need to figure out kind of what happened, last week and kind of the past 3 games to kind of get an understanding of where these losses are kind of coming from. And we're going to talk about that New York City game next, right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer, of course, at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Of course, make sure you check out 615soccer.com. You can get a video version of this podcast. You can get so many great articles that are, just absolutely fantastic. Valer and Ben have been really killing it with the work that they've done throughout the entire season, and we're not slowing down. So make sure you spell it out. Are we playing charades, Clay? Like, what's happening here?
I was just trying to make sure that you remembered to remind people to give 5-star reviews on Apple. That way,
good call. Thank you, Clay. That is a great reminder. Please also make sure you leave us a 5-star review or comment on Spotify. We like seeing those. We like reading those on air. So please make sure you do so. I also want to give a shout out because I wasn't here. Shout out to Kevin, a big listener who I met in St. Louis. I met you and your lovely wife. It was fantastic to hang out with you, do all that type of stuff. It was great. I was also really fun to hang out with Ronan and Jeff, who I finally got to hang out with as part of the 615 soccer team. So that was a lot of fun. Glad I got to do St. Louis. And thank you, Kevin, again for all the kind words and listening. Also,
did you get any toasted ravioli when you were there?
I did not get any toasted ravioli.
That's a waste of a trip to say.
I did not have time for toasted. I didn't have time for
They have them at the
Pappy.
stadium.
Well, you think I had time at the stadium to go get toasted ravioli?
What else?
No toasted ravioli and no Pappies
You're not
is a complete waste of a trip to St. Louis.
You're not involved with the supporters anymore. I heard you've completely transitioned to the Chattanooga gig now. So
Well, that's so funny, Valer. No, it's not like I absolutely did have to do supporter stuff, even though it's not. I absolutely did. But that's okay. I have fun.
Did Jeff and Ronan ask you why you aren't supporting Huntsville and you support Chattanooga instead in MLS Next Pro?
I don't.
Offended? They should be offended.
I don't do that, so that doesn't matter. It's perfectly fine. Y'all can say whatever you want, but it's not true.
So NYCFC. Can I tell you?
Pharmasoccer.com
if you want
to talk about
merchandise. We just don't want to talk about NYCFC is what's going on. Even though Valaire's wearing a light blue shirt.
Pharmasoccer.com if you want to buy merch from us. We have cool shirts. It's fantastic. Go buy it.
Okay.
Yay. Now let's talk about NYCFC. Now that I'm done being interrupted. Yes, Valaire, what would you like?
Can I tell you about my experience at the stadium? And we usually do that in the first segment, but I never got to talk about it. So I was at the Yankee Stadium to watch some soccer, which already sounds weird. But it was my
dude went into Yankee Stadium wearing a suit, by the way.
I was not wearing a suit.
You weren't wearing a suit?
No, why would I wear a suit?
I don't know.
What?
It looks like you were from the picture, from the bird's eye picture. It looks like you were wearing a suit.
There was a picture of me wearing a suit in Yankee Stadium.
It looked like it.
What are you talking? It was a T-shirt. What? I didn't even have a collar.
It looked like
anyway, in Yankee Stadium, it's not a bird's eye view; it's a pigeon's eye view.
That's good.
But
anyways, yes,
it was honestly, it's an interesting place. I'd been to it for a soccer game last year, in the stands, and this time I was in the press box. A little bit different. It's a little further out. The pitch is a little further out from the press box because obviously it's a baseball stadium, and sometimes you have to squint a little bit, but. It's a good experience, and I think overall I am ready for NYCFC and all these teams to have a soccer specific stadium, but I do think there is a historic element, and even me who doesn't know anything about baseball and doesn't really understand baseball at all, I could feel that historic element to it, and I can feel that importance kind of walking around and seeing the stuff on the wall and seeing the vibe there. Again, I think the rain delay did do the match and the experience a disservice to everybody involved. And I know somebody from our Discord who was going in for the match on Sunday and flying out Sunday night. And I hope they made the flight back. So for that reason, maybe some of the experience wasn't as great. But overall, anytime we do these trips away to other stadiums, I do think it brings a little bit of an appreciation for Geodis Park as well. And, this is not, I don't know what the situation is with the food and all that stuff, but I do know that there are some like local vendors for the food, which I do at Geodis Park, which really does help out with the experience, for the fan experience. And then just overall being at a new building, being in a building that is built specifically for soccer, I think it just puts it into perspective that that's not available for everybody else. So it was just a cool thing to kind of add to my list of press boxes I've been to, I guess, because I never thought I would be at Yankee Stadium press box if you asked me, years ago. But that was cool. And then now we can get into the game and the depressing parts that you guys want to talk about.
Well, just real quick, because I feel obligated to shout out Evansville Memorial legend Don Mattingly if you're going to talk about Yankee Stadium. So even though he played in the old Yankee Stadium, not the new one.
Your team lost to Leeds yesterday. Who also lost would be Nashville SC, losing 2-1 to New York City Football Club, or Manchester City Light United, whatever. 2-1 loss, of course. Jacob Schaffelberg getting the goal in the first 10 minutes, and then us not being able to hold on to that lead. I do think we need to start with the beginning of the match specifically, because after 10 minutes, I was hype. I thought we should have had 3 goals by that time in some instances. That first 10 minutes, we looked on fire in comparison to the rest of the match.
Yeah, I was sitting next to some New York folks, and they were saying the same thing. Like they were talking about how Nashville just didn't take advantage of what looked like could have been 2-3 nil, really, within 15-20 minutes.
I think that there are a lot of things in that game. I'm hesitant to put a whole lot, especially after the rain delay, because it's awkward situation, the way the field was, all this stuff kind of plays into some weird stuff. But I do think there's a lot of things from that game that are a microcosm of what's gone wrong the last month or so with Nashville SC. One of them is, of course, not taking your chances. We've seen that happen a lot, and it's easy to like look at the fact that Nashville has scored a fair amount of goals, mostly from, of course, Surge and Mukhtar, but they've had a lot of goals they could have scored that haven't been put away, not just by those two, but by everyone else on the roster. It's really important for Schaffelberg to get a goal. He hasn't really done a whole lot this season, just generally speaking, and he probably needs to get a few more goals like that or assists like that in order to like maybe get back on the right track. But uh, you look at some of the mistakes defensively; those weren't exactly out of place when looking at the games that went wrong for Nashville this year. Uh, a lot of the times when Nashville has a bad performance, we saw the things that we saw in the New York City FC game, and so you hope that's things that get corrected. But it is one of those where it's like, oh, okay, you can kind of tell if Nashville has a good 10 minutes and then goes on the back foot, maybe this is going to be another one of those days, of which there have been more in the last, not just the last month, the last 2 months of the season, than there were in the prior 2 months.
Yeah, and one of the things that was talked about and asked, you kind of brought it up, Clay. Just when you look at the New York City match, there's a lot of things that have kind of been incorporated throughout the past couple losses, especially into that New York City match. Both Josh and Austin asked us specifically about a common thread between those matches and that New York City FC match that led to the loss. Falair, is there anything specific that you saw in the NYCFC match that does e- more of a common thread, not necessarily a concern specifically for the rest of the season, but is there a common thread that you noticed in that NYCFC match that you also noticed in the other two?
I think there are multiple things that may start to look like a trend rather than just a random sort of occurrence. Uh, part of it, part of it is something that Nashville can fix, and part of it is just Nashville being unlucky with injuries. And I do think missing Dan Lovis is a bigger piece to this puzzle than a lot of people thought it was going to be. I think missing Alex Muyl against NYCFC is a big piece of the puzzle as well. So I think when you look at those two missing some of the matches, Walker Zimmerman just coming back, that's going to be effective. Now, that's the stuff Nashville can't control. Let's get to the stuff that Nashville can control. And there is some of that as well. First of all, it seems like a lot of teams have figured out Eddie Taxeth. And I don't mean that in that Eddie Taxeth is a bad player or Eddie Taxeth is not it's the worst player on the pitch or anything like that. No, it just seems like teams have gone to his head a little bit more than usual. Now, in the past, Eddie Taxeth was able to annoy his whoever's coming ahead in front of him and kind of get the best out of that situation. In the last 3 games, he wasn't getting the best of those situations. He was getting the worst out of those situations. Even in the NYCFC match specifically, he got really close with the red card. He was flirting with the red card. And that's been a common thread throughout those losses that Eddie Taxeth becomes a little agitated. Now, let's not put it all on him. This is not an Eddie Taxeth thing. This is a team thing because on the other side, look, I'm not a genius, and you don't need a genius to tell you this. Sam Surridge has 18 MLS goals. None of them came in the last 3 games. And when your Golden Boot leader is not scoring goals, that's an issue as well. Now, is that just on Sam Surridge? Is that on the build-up play? Is that teams figuring out Nashville? It's probably all of those. But Sam Surridge against NYCFC was dealt with really, really well by backup NYCFC center backs. And I just don't think that's going to be something that Nashville will look fondly upon. And I don't think that's something Sam Surridge would like to see back because he was really, really frustrated. And maybe they got some of the calls, and that's just going to be a symptom of him being tall and lanky and English, and he's not going to get the calls because these referees are people too, and that's mistakes are going to happen. He can't let that affect him and affect his performance. And I would say against NYCFC, that definitely factored into his performance, and you could totally see his frustration building the more he went on. He was limited to like 20 touches in the entire match. He played 90 minutes and he was limited to 20 touches, or maybe 21 touches.
He didn't play 90 minutes, just an FYI. If we're still talking about, are we still talking about Eddie?
No, Sam Surridge.
Oh, sorry,
Sam
my bad.
Surridge. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to build off the surge point that Valera was making. If you look at these 3 games going into these 3 losses, you would have thought that it was going to be prime time for Surridge because he's going up against young center backs, reserve center backs in all 3 matches. And he has been so unbelievably limited in those matches. And I think that that's going to be a point that's drilled into him probably this week, is that like these were, I mean, in theory, if you're trying to win a golden boot, those sorts of setups where you're the main guy scoring goals against reserves and young players, that's where you kind of run the total up a little bit. And Serge is known to do that, score more than once in a match, and he was barely getting any touches on the ball. You mentioned tag Seth. I think that's important. I think the most important thing there that we're starting to see, other than teams getting in his head, he's getting subbed off earlier, and that wasn't happening earlier in the season, and I think that's because he's been less effective. And for a central midfielder, you start to cut. You were playing all 90, and then you start to come off in the 70th, and you start coming off in the 60th. I think that's a clear sign that maybe you've lost a bit of your effectiveness. It's not a long-term thing; it's a trying to navigate a new league thing. I I was asked to talk about people, asking us questions in the Discord, as we talked about it already. Spence asked me to talk about the sort of lack of balance going forward that I think has been really apparent the last year. It's very apparent in the NYCFC game because Daniel Levitz is out, and you're basically with the third string left back in Bauer. But earlier this season, we were talking about the fullbacks bombing forward, and it wasn't just Nahar, who's had a great season. It was Lovitz. Like Lovitz had a bunch of goal contribution, whether he's scoring, whether he's putting in the ball, whatever it may be, which is something that Nashville had been effective at in the past, of getting those sorts of contributions from Dan Lovitz, but never as much as this season. And sort of as the ascendance of Nahar has happened, Nashville's gradually shifted more and more and more to coming up the right side. Now, there's other reasons for that, of course, but I think that it makes Nashville a little bit easier to defend. And this is a team that we've talked about being very dynamic going forward. Like, it's the same 2 guys scoring the goals, but the goals were coming out of different situations. And I think that as we've seen Nahar have a good season, Nashville has drifted more and more and more to the right side of the field and has essentially cut off their scoring ability from the other side of the field. And I think that that's something to worry about, especially considering that we're pinning a lot of this on Andy Nahar, great player, having the best season that he's ever had, but also an injury-prone player that hasn't played a full MLS season in quite a while. And he's, knock on wood, but this is something that teams know about him. That's the reason he's affordable. And so that is, to me, like one of the big concerns is how do they refine that balance? If they refine the balance going forward, I'm sure they'll find a bit more balanced scoring as well, and it won't just be dependent on the 2 guys.
Well, and that's why I think and I'm curious because you both brought up just specific people and their contributions, where I think it's a little bit more of an overall management of just the team itself. Like Josh Bauer was in, part of that build up specifically for the goal that we did score. I don't actually think Josh Bauer had a terrific, like an awful game. And I actually think Josh Bauer looks pretty good in a lot of offensive spots. Not probably as good as Dan Lovitz, but I still think he, played his part, as he needed to. I think that first 10 minutes was like absolutely Nashville in the way that Nashville can play. But normally you kind of see that go on a little bit longer. I think you do see it, and you don't necessarily see Nashville start, hocking up long balls starting, after a rain delay, which is what ended up happening, it seemed like, in that second half of the match. So do you guys think just it is more of just the style itself Nashville is that they kind of have to manage, the style of that they play through the rest of the season? Or do you think specifically it is more to the people contributing into the style that they need to improve?
It's probably a little bit of both, but I would say like that first 10 minutes or the first 15 minutes not being very effective and then not being effective afterwards. We're a Nashville focused podcast. We're always going to talk about Nashville SC first, but I think credit has to be given to New York City FC and how they dealt with that and how they fixed a certain part of their issues. And we asked both Jacob Schaffelberg and BJ Callahan about that afterwards, and they both gave credit to NYCFC because the way NYCFC reacted to that first 15 minutes was that once the goal went in, they started having more of the ball. They started being way more confident on the ball. And then at the back, they didn't leave any more space for Jacob Schaffelberg to run into, to where initially he was running free. Jacob Schaffelberg was running those defenders down. And then they started playing really close to him. They didn't let him have those runs. They even picked up maybe a yellow card or something. So I think we have to give credit to the other team as well for doing well and dealing with the situations well. Now that's where BJ Callahan comes in. That's where Nashville SC come in and say, here's plan B, here's plan C, here's plan D, so on and so forth. And I think that might have been, we can only say so much was due to the rain delay or whatever. Not rain delay, sorry, lightning delay. But also overall, Nashville SC have taken a step back. And that does have to do with the system a little bit. And a little bit has to do on the coach, of course, because the coach, we praised him for being able to get the best out of players we don't know about or are unfamiliar with, like White Meyer or Corcoran and other players as well who maybe haven't played as many minutes. At the same time, we can kind of blame a little bit of this on him because if a player is coming in and not performing to the best of his ability, that is on the coaching staff. While that said, I do want to give kind of props to the players who were doing well. And specifically, I think we kind of glossed over it a little bit, but Jacob Schaffelberg had a really, really good first half game overall too. I know in the second half he kind of wasn't as effective, but he needed that, and he talked about it after the game, and he said he wanted to give a lot of credit to Mike, the assistant coach, for kind of working with him the last 2 weeks of being the best version he can be for this team. And he even mentioned specifically how frustrating this season has been and that he needs to be the best he can be, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or starting. And I think that goal is going to do wonders for him. We know he's a player who is really talented and has the ability to break down teams. It's just a matter of putting it all together. I think him combining with Hani Mukhtar is actually a really big positive. So while we kind of are, I know we were on the negative train, but I'm kind of switching this a little bit to talk about Jacob Schaffelberg, who I thought had a really good game, as well as I had somebody else in mind to talk about a good
Well,
game.
one, this would be the moment specifically where we put in the meme of the guys handshaking, and one of the sides is Steve Guppy, and the other side is the other assistant coach for Nashville, and it's working with Jacob Schaffelberg crediting assistant coaches because he's now done that multiple times
Yeah,
over the years.
yeah,
I think one player specifically in Valera, this may or may not be who you were bringing up. I thought this is one of the best matches that we got to see Patrick
yep,
Yazbek's
yep,
technical
yep.
ability. Patrick Yazbek, look, I did not realize how good with the ball that Patrick Yazbek actually is until that match. The way he was navigating some players specifically and the way that he was able to push, I mean, he was one of the only bright spots in kind of pushing the ball up, forward a little bit. And I thought he played extremely well in that match. It was really nice to see him kind of come to his own.
And he covers a lot of ground. He covers a lot of ground, sometimes even more than Eddie Taxev. So it's good to note. And then the last thing I was just gonna say, I don't know if this is a positive necessarily, but it seems like it's trending this way. Gaston Brugman is finding a spot in this team slowly but surely. It has taken almost the entire season, but I am seeing a lot more from him, especially in the last, maybe the NYCFC game, not as much, but the last two games beforehand. Unfortunately, Nashville haven't been winning those, but not yesterday, Sunday night, I was definitely calling for him to be put on because now, NYCFC, at least when it was 1-1, there was an opportunity to beat them on those runs. And the best player, the best passer Nashville SC has on the squad is Gaston Brugman. And I thought he would come in even earlier than when he did. Unfortunately, pretty close after he came on, the NYCFC scored the goal and changed the game completely, because now NYCFC were sitting back and allowing less of a space behind them. I would have liked to see him with more space to operate with.
And that's something, I mean, we've all been, at least in the last month or two, saying there's going to be a point where Gaston Brugman becomes important in this team because he's too skilled to not. And maybe that's what we're starting to see, especially as maybe other Nashville SC midfielders have been figured out a little bit more. The one thing I feel like we have to talk about that we haven't talked about yet, because it was such a topic of on the Discord over the weekend, was figuring out what that center back pairing is going to be. I think that, you know, for a while there, we've wanted to see Walker Zimmerman and Jason Palacios play next to each other, despite the fact that both maybe have the occasional mistake in them. I don't think that Jack Mayer had a game where he can really point to be a. He's had some mistakes the last few weeks, but I thought there was an interesting point brought up by Brian in the Discord, which is that Mayer becomes exceptionally better when he's got a regular partner, no matter who that partner is, whether it's Zimmerman or Palacios. When he's playing with the same guy every week, he looks like a completely different player
Yeah,
than when there's a lot of change and maybe unsettledness. And I thought that was a really
it's a really good
astute
point. Yeah.
observation on Mayer, who it sometimes looks like a really good defender and sometimes looks not so great, average maybe. Uh, but now that Zimmerman's rotating in, you're kind of in that selection dilemma once again. But as opposed to what it was maybe 2 months ago, when it's like, oh man, we have three good center backs, which one's going to start? I think it's what grouping of center backs is the most likely to keep a clean sheet, which is an entirely different question. And I think it's one that they're going to have to get figured out here relatively soon, especially with two games against a very hot Orlando team down the stretch.
I also think we learn a little bit about BJ's preferences in terms of putting Walker Zimmerman in whenever he's available. And I don't think that's a wrong thing. I think that's actually very accurate for this team, is that Walker Zimmerman is still a very, very important piece of this team and the captain of the club. And on the pitch, though, on the pitch, he is very important. And I think anytime he's available, we're going to see more of him. So, people were talking about, having three center backs, like where are you going to find the minutes at, or four with Josh Bauer, of course. But I think all three of those center backs we talked about have been healthy for all of like 5 games this season and ready to go. And it's been 27 games already into MLS. So, season is long. There's a lot of games there are a lot of minutes to be passed around. So, I think that's a problem that BJ can deal with when it comes to it. But I do believe Walker Zimmerman, if available and fit, will start as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that the center backs in our squad are perfectly fine with the playing time that they're all getting, because they're all getting a lot of
Yeah.
playing time. Like, especially with the amount of matches that Nashville has had. I believe it's going to be, I'm sure even Josh Bauer might be happy with the amount of playing time that he's getting, like, because he's had to fit into a lot of roles there as well. Um, Depth wise, when it comes to the other parts of the squad, I'm not fully sure. I'm scared about being able to come back from matches in the 75th minute and beyond. I don't know about you guys, but I think it'll be very interesting to see throughout the season. And we start that next week. We have a massive match next week against Orlando that rolls into the Supporter Shield race, and we're going to talk about that next, right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. We are back. Last segment of the show right here at PharmaSoccer, again on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, check out 615soccer.com. Spell it out. Become a part of the movement that we are starting with 615soccer.com. And, of course, pharmasoccer.com for merchandise. We talked a lot about just kind of the Supporter Shield already. I don't think there's a ton of, specifics to go into it. Maybe I'll just ask you both a prediction as of now, after, because it was chaotic. A lot of teams have lost, which means Nashville is still a part of it. Philadelphia, for example, lost 1 or 2 matches in a row, still making them, I think, lower than Cincinnati. So, prediction: who wins the Supporters Shield as of right now?
I think I got asked this on this show a month ago, and
Yeah,
both Clay and I said Miami. Um, I'm not changing that. I don't. I have seen no reason. I still think they are the best team talent wise. Messi has played 19 MLS games and has 19 goals and 10 assists. I don't know what to tell you, dude. That's I don't. Do I need to read anything else other than that stat line? I mean, that's where we're at with this team, and they only got stronger in the summer. So, yeah, I'm sticking with my guess.
Miami's got 3 games in hand. I think that they've lost some games, maybe, or dropped points in some games they didn't need to. But they're only 7 points off the top with 3 games in hand. I do think that I'm starting to think Philly is going to be, if it's going to be somebody other than in the East, if it's going to be someone other than them, it might end up being Philly. But
See,
honestly, I'm becoming a Philly believer. I'm sorry.
I'll push on that. I think if it's not Miami, I think Cincy will finish above Philly almost certainly, based on what I've seen so
Okay.
far.
well, I
Well,
mean,
I think if it's not going to be Miami, it's going to be San Diego.
well, I think it's interesting the teams that, we're talking about are also the ones that made specific signings during this window to try to improve to be, in that Supporter Shield race. Miami specifically being one, Philadelphia signing the guy from San Diego. I mean, I think it'll be interesting down the stretch.
It's really helpful if you don't have to worry about TAM and DP restrictions to make some signings. And I know that technically Miami is following the rules by not agreeing to buy obligations that are 100% agreed to, just not on paper.
It's fine.
It's a very helpful thing when you're signing players.
When I was in high school, okay,
Oh, God, what?
My mom didn't speak any
Shout out to
English.
Overton.
We had just moved to America, and anytime I wanted to get out of school, I had changed the number for what would be my parent. Well, what my parents' number would be to my friend's number. And anytime I wanted to get out of school, they would just call my parents, which was my friend, because why not? So anytime I needed permission to leave school, I got permission from myself. And I just feel like this is related to Miami somehow.
All right, cool. I was wondering where that was going for a second and how you were trying to relate it. I still
Anyway,
don't know
Valeri's
if it's
I
terrific.
did-
a proud graduate of Overton and MTSU.
I did graduate
student.
with a good GPA. I did ace. I was exempt from all my exams my senior year of high school, I want to say, and I did get a college degree. So I just wanted to skip school so I can watch soccer games, Iraq national team. That was because they played in the morning. I just want to clarify for all the kids listening.
Before we kind of get into the other stuff, we haven't even talked about it yet. Well, besides one backhanded joke that I made, y'all, Premier League started. We're back. Like, it is full blown soccer.
Premier League doesn't start until the window closes.
Yeah, that's how Everton's season. But
we won 3 games in August in like the last 10 years.
Only one person here is celebrating a win. So
I mean, we kind of have a spectrum. We have a draw, a loss, and a win. So I mean,
do you guys want to hear one of the most Everton stats you'll hear this season?
Sure.
Already?
Well, the last Everton manager to win in August was Rafa Benitez.
Oh yikes!
Oh God.
Yeah. That's a Liverpool legend for you. Okay. Yeah. Other than Premier League, though, another league that maybe Nashville SC fans care about a little bit more is MLS Next Pro. And
Are we sure about this?
I mean, Huntsville will play there.
I appreciate the attempt at the transition, and you had it there for a second, but I'm not sure specifically.
Look, Huntsville is on a heater. They're on a 6-game unbeaten run. They're looking really good. They are second in the East, which is pretty good. Obviously, it is funny. It's fun because they do have a game in hand, I should say, on first. If they do win that, they will move on to first place in the East. I think the top teams in the league get to choose their opponent once the playoffs get there, which is a really, really interesting mechanism.
That is awesome. Can that be adopted everywhere?
So I honestly just want to see what happens there more than anything. But Huntsville has been going on a really really good run here, and then I think that the two sort of the stats leaders, we should say, is Carlton, who already played for Nashville SC this season. Alan Carlton, 10 goals, 6 assists. Christian Coffey is the other one with also 10 goals and 5 assists. So those are the two stat leaders. There's a lot of movement in that roster, though. So you'll see a lot of names come in and perform well and kind of be replaced often.
Can I just say, there's been all these things about trying to make the MLS Cup playoffs feel more important or feel more interesting. If you did a draft of your opponents for the first round, I can't think of anything more interesting than that, because the team that gets selected is going to feel pretty PO'd about it.
All right. So Nashville
Like,
currently in third place. Say Nashville had the ability to choose their opponent for the playoffs between Miami, Columbus, Charlotte, or NYCFC. Who are you choosing?
Charlotte.
Well,
Charlotte's on a
it
heater
could
right
be
now.
Chicago, and it's absolutely Chicago.
Well, yeah, if Chicago,
yeah, of course, the team you scored 7 goals against, you'll pick them again.
I was gonna say, right now, Chicago's in the playoffs, so
but yes, keep on paying attention to Huntsville.
I,
They're doing great.
I do want to say our Discord is pretty active on Huntsville as well. So another perk, I think the best perk out of 615 Soccer is the Discord. So subscribe. Even the $3 tier gets you into the Discord. So it's $3 or $7, and we would really appreciate it. But also, I think you'll get a lot because of how active this Discord is about Huntsville and obviously Nashville SC and honestly all of soccer and sometimes even random things if you go to the random channel. But I do want to say that if you want more on Huntsville, not only 615soccer.com, obviously we have really good coverage of Huntsville City FC and our socials, but also our Discord because our members are really good and they love this team.
Talked about Philadelphia earlier. We got to talk about them again because our Open Cup opponent has been scheduled because of a win against they beat New York Red Bulls after that rain delayed game, even though there was another delay in the Red Bulls and Philadelphia game, which scared me for a second because it did not look like that rain was going to stop, but it did. Philadelphia ended up getting the win, so that means we play Philadelphia for the semifinal at home on September 16th, I believe is the date that was scheduled. So be ready for that. I'm not going to opt out of my tickets just in case I do go.
Yeah, I think the other thing I will say is that if Philadelphia has played Nashville obviously twice this season, home and away, and Nashville have won both, not easily at all, especially the home Nashville match. It was a tough one. Nashville were down to 10 players, and that penalty kick at the end there. If you want to look at those highlights and also the Philly game in Philly, both really good matches. I will say this: if Nashville is able to beat Philadelphia, the final will be either in Minnesota or Austin, depending on who wins, and that will be the second or the first in terms of the biggest Nashville games ever in the history of this club in all of its iterations. So because it's
it will be
2025
there.
and this is the 2025 tournament, I'll just say the biggest Nashville game of all time. So that I think that's gonna be a really huge one. Now it does depend on Nashville beating the Supporter Shield leaders.
And I will say Philly, they're 1 point off the lead in the Supporter Shield.
Right, San Diego.
But I will say Philly is absolutely still in the hunt for the Supporter Shield, which could play into Nashville's hands a little bit. They go away to Vancouver before coming down to Nashville for the Open Cup semifinal, and then they play New England at home. So, it's a midweek game for both teams, but an away trip to Vancouver from Philly, I mean, you couldn't really ask for a better setup to play one of the best teams in the league.
Who Vancouver is also in the Supporter Shield race because
Exactly.
who isn't at this point? And
It's
they
a
signed
Supporter
Thomas
Shield
Muller.
6-pointer
And
right before the Nashville game.
And also, just for clarification, Cincy is actually above Philadelphia right now by 1 point.
Never heard of her.
That's fair. But one of the teams that's below us that we do play over the weekend, which is going to be massive in implications for Nashville SC, I think just for continuing form, and just getting an understanding of where this team belongs is Orlando City. We play them at home on Saturday. It'll be good to have a good atmosphere back in Geodis Park. But Orlando has started to really come into their own and is looking pretty scary. So how are we feeling about this at the current moment?
Yeah, they're always been a team that they were slated to do so, kind of like the opposite of Nashville to start with. They were supposed to be where Nashville were for most of the season and just couldn't get it figured out for the most part. But once it hit, they have, I think, the best thing about Orlando is they have multiple goal scorers. So Luis Muriel was doing it for a period this season. When he started sort of not getting in that form, Enrique took over. Pasalic has been in good form throughout, and Ojeda obviously is having like almost MVP like season here. So let me just read this off to you because I think it will make sense. So Ojeda has 14 goals, Pasalic has 11, Enrique has 8, Morial has 8. So that's 4 goal scorers who all have more goals than anyone in Nashville SC other than obviously Sam Surridge and Hani Mokhtar. So where Nashville kind of falls in that, who is the third, fourth in that goal scorer, Orlando have 4 established goal scorers. And while, yeah, not all of them are going to be in form, not all of them are going to be healthy at the same time, they do have a little bit more options going forward. And like Steven said, this is a really good point for them in the season where this is the lowest point for Nashville SC. They are tied in terms of points, but Nashville SC has an extra win on them, I believe, which is why Nashville SC is ahead of them in the table. But in points, they are tied in points. So, yeah, big game. This
They,
is 6
they
pointer.
haven't they haven't lost in a month. Like Orlando has been really good. They haven't lost in a month, and one of those teams is beating Miami at home in Miami 4-1.
Well, it's not just they haven't lost in a month. Like they are hammering everyone they play.
3-1,
Uh,
4-1, 5-1, 3-1,
they're a team that
3-1.
used the team that used the League's Cup to get rolling. It's 16 goals in the last 4 matches, 19 in the last 6. And one of those is Miami, one of those is Columbus. Um, in terms of form, like a team in form, this is probably the most informed team that Nashville has played this season.
Yep.
So it's a huge match. I do think that Orlando is probably in the same way that Nashville was kind of overperforming where they were. I think that you could definitely make the argument for Orlando that they're going to have to come back down a little bit. They're still a very good team. I don't think they're as good as they've been playing the last month. So I'm very interested to see what we see from Nashville. We've been saying we're going to see a bounce back from Nashville for the last 2 weeks, and we haven't really seen it happen on the field. I do have some concerns if this streak runs to, four games in a row, and then you're playing against Atlanta in a genuine must-win game because Atlanta's bad. So I think like you need to like put a marker down, even if it's not a win, put a marker down that you can play a good team well again because they've done that several times before this part of the season.
Nashville does need to do these things, but what are you predicting is going to happen, Clay? Why don't you plug it up and give your prediction?
Before Clay starts, just Orlando plays on Wednesday as well in the League's Cup. So they do have a midweek game where Nashville doesn't. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, and I think that Orlando is justifiably going to look at the League's Cup more than the Nashville game. I think Orlando is very much in the Supporter Shield race, but you're going to prioritize a trophy over that when there's so many teams still in the Supporter Shield race. But so I think that's a tough one. I think Nashville is going to finally have the bounce back that game they've been looking for, but it's going to be a nervy evening at Geodis Park, and Nashville wins 2-1 with a goal in the last 5 minutes, scored by Hani Mukhtar.
Valer.
And where can people find you, Clay?
They can find me at Clay Lasol on Twitter and Instagram. You can check out the Nashville Soccer Archive. Once again, if you have any items that are important to Nashville soccer history, whether you think they're important or not, just let me know because chances are I want them either way. We have a physical archive that is at Vanderbilt that is actually going to be used in some classes this fall. So if you want your items preserved by professional archivists, please reach out to me. We'll get them put in at Vandy. Shout out to former NSC employee Cutler Klein, who made a couple of donations just last week. So we are building that archive, and we'd love to have more, especially from teams that aren't Nashville SC.
And then for me, at Valer Shabilla on all socials, and also check out ki615.org at kicking it615 for all your local nonprofit needs. I will say Orlando is probably the team that Nashville has played the most. Maybe Miami. They've played 16 times, 15 times. This will be the 16th, which is really a lot for any team to play Nashville. I'm going to predict a 2-0 Nashville SC win, which is way more positive than I usually am, I feel like. But I think Sam Sturridge will get back to his scoring ways. And I think Hani Mukhtar will score a penalty because he will take it, because at that point, Sam Sturridge will be subbed off. That's a very specific one, but oh well.
I hate Orlando with everything I have in me. And I think Nashville does too, which means they're going to have the bounce back game of all bounce back games. 4-0 win for Nashville. I am predicting 2 goals from Hani. I am predicting Ahmed Qasim to get back on the goal scoring sheet as a late sub. And then let's predict a Yazbek banger as well from outside the box. That's what I'm predicting, and it's going to happen. Thank you
Here's
guys
a
so
fun
much.
game. Here's a fun game. Where
What?
is Nashville on Matt Doyle's power rankings next week?
9th.
8th.
7th.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. We really do appreciate it. Y'all have been fantastic. Of course, we'll be back next week to talk about the match and all other Nashville soccer related news. Thank you so much again. We really appreciate you being here. Have a great rest of your week.